Thanks for tuning in to the 6Three podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and my co-host, Ben. Week 6 in the books in the NFL. Uh,
Yeah.
only one game canceled so far.
Yeah, kind of amazing.
Couple pushbacks, but only one canceled.
Yeah, a couple pushbacks. I think if the problem that the NFL is going to run into is if they have any more setbacks, COVID setbacks, issues, they're almost kind of running out of wiggle room. With the schedule, they've had to move so many games around now, and they don't have any real built-in buys other than the typical buy that every team's getting, and some of those buys are gone now due to all this. So they're kind of running out of room because if you move one game, then you got to move another game, and it just kind of becomes a snowball effect, which they've been able to do to this point, which is awesome to see. Really good, happy to see that, but hopefully they can kind of get this under control because they've had some issues lately, with some select teams, and a handful of teams have had some issues. So hopefully they can kind of get it under control a little bit and try to kind of get it figured out, and how to kind of get a handle on it so they don't have to cancel some stuff. Because really, I think the next step, beyond, if there's something small, they can probably handle it. But any other bigger outbreaks within multiple teams now, I think the next step is probably more cancellations. So.
Yeah, which then, a third of the NFL now has had a bye week.
Yeah.
So that's already getting pretty steep. Like you said, that leaves the 2/3 of the league for them to, stay healthy until they hit their bye week. And then for these teams that have had their bye week, they have to be 100% healthy going forward. And the NFL, they have plenty of time to really kind of get this planned and figured out. We talked about it in our NFL preview already about how they were going to deal with COVID. And it just seems like they kind of really slacked putting things together along with like the BigTen and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in situations like this, they probably should have accounted for this and maybe offered a second bye week just to kind of help space things out a little bit.
My whole thing is like, I don't know why they wouldn't. Like they already eliminated the preseason, so it's not like they're worried about, oh, well, we got to make sure we get the preseason in. I just don't know why they couldn't have built in. Even if you reduce the season by a game, like let's just say, okay, everybody's going to play 15 games instead of 16. I know, I know that's that, but even just for this season, let's just say that's the case. And then it's like, okay, everybody plays 15. Now we have an extra week to play with, where, if something like this happens, we actually have a little bit of wiggle room where we can move stuff around. Without that, you run the risk of having to cancel games. And when you cancel games, when it comes down to the wire at the end, and then you run into tiebreakers and all these different things. And, it could become kind of interesting and kind of frustrating for some teams, I'm sure, who haven't been able to practice and, who might get a game canceled or something. It's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of shakes out.
Do teams that after they what they have done, they're talking about the Titans for so long here and how they still got pushed back even after their first game got postponed to a later week. They took an early bye week.
Yeah.
Are they gonna look at making these teams forfeit a game, or is it just they're gonna play a game less and that's gonna be winning percentage that gets them in the playoffs? Because the Titans are a high end playoff caliber team, obviously 5-0 going into this week.
Right. what I would think is that the league hopes it just shakes out to the point where that never comes into question, So where the Titans are clearly, better, their record is better than every other team regardless. It doesn't matter whether they have to take an L or just play one less game. I think that's the hope for the league. And maybe if everything goes smooth from here on out, that could happen. However, if they run into more issues, there's going to be more teams in the Titan situation. And, you get to a point where it's like, all right, you got to kind of make a decision on what. And I would hope, my hope would be that they've already thought this through on what happens if this happens. That's kind of basic crisis control, management here, where it's like, okay, if this happens, what do we do? If this happens, what do we do? Worst case scenario, what do we do? That type of thing. So I hope they would have already thought all these scenarios through and can't have a plan. But I don't know. I mean, they haven't made it clear to the public, which I guess they really don't have to. But I don't really know if they have an idea about what they have to do or what they're going to do if that comes to that. So
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm trying to picture what happens if every other team pretty much stays healthy, assuming here and out, and then let's say the Titans have another situation where they have to for sure cancel a game now.
yeah,
They go into week 17, they're 15-0. Let's say they're 15-0, and the Chiefs, they're 15-1. Who knows what would have happened with that Titans game? Who gets that top seed? Like that's
that's really.
Again, they're in charges. They owe us nothing to tell us how
No,
they're.
they don't. But that's really interesting. It's like, okay, why do I mean, if you're the
Because
Chiefs,
technically you're violating COVID protocol. If your team is blowing up with COVID cases,
you're doing something wrong.
you're doing something wrong.
Technically, I mean,
Yeah, I guess it's not a for sure thing.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? But like, really, you've
To have
got
that many
yourself
cases,
exposed.
they had that many cases, and they had that one week where I think they broke over 20 cases.
Yeah, and well, the NFL was looking. I think they decided today or yesterday that they're not going to discipline them, but they were looking into possibly, coming up with some discipline. I'm guessing they, investigated it and came up with the fact that hey, maybe they're, they didn't do anything wrong, and it's just it was unfortunate circumstance, and it is what it is. But yeah, you're right. If they have another outbreak or something like that happens, or and then they end up 15-0 at the end of the year. So I don't think, if it goes smooth the rest of the year, I don't think they'll run into a problem like that. But they could. I mean, and
I'm playing all the sorts of what if scenarios. Obviously.
Yeah, and if that's determining, I mean, you'd be frustrated if you were the Chiefs in that situation, or if that's determining home field advantage or first round buys and stuff like that. Like that's a big deal. Not that home field means as
Especially
much.
because only one team gets a first round bye now. I think it's only the first seed.
I think it is.
That bye, and then they added that seventh playoff team to the division.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, I mean, if you get home field, it doesn't mean as much now as it did.
Not with COVID and teams at maybe 25% capacity now, but
yeah, it doesn't. But at the same time, you still want to play at your home field. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. I hope as a fan, I hope that doesn't come to that where they have to make that kind of decision. But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean,
yeah.
It is what it is. I mean, once it comes to that, you gotta just make a decision and roll with it. One team's not somebody's not going to be happy, and one team's going to be happy. So
yeah, it's an unprecedented year for sure. So they obviously, I'm sure they've gotten a book written down of backup plans. That would.
I hope.
I mean, a professional league should probably have this in order. If not,
you would hope, but you never know. I mean, I don't know. Not necessarily the NFL. I don't really blame them, but like, there's been plenty of, throughout this whole thing on all levels, not just from sports. Like there should have, there could have been more planning on any level. I mean, you never know. So I don't know. You would hope that they would have thought up. They had all the kinds of time to think of a plan in all these different what if scenarios. So you would hope they'd have an idea of what to do, but we'll see.
All right, well, I'm going to read off a couple of stats then for the week, and then we'll move right through the Lions. But
Sure.
Through 6 weeks, Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf is the only player in the NFL to have 90-plus receiving yards in every single game. Granted, they had a bye week just this last week, so he only played 5. But
sure, yeah,
yeah. The only qualified pass catcher with a higher drop rate than Julio Jones this year is DeAndre Swift. So Julio Jones has a 15.5% drop rate.
Yeah, he's been. I mean, I know he's been hurt a lot. And he blew up this last week, so he had a great game. So maybe he's getting back to his normal self. But yeah, he's not been very good this year.
Going before they played the Jaguars this week, the Lions were the only team in the NFL that played only teams with winning records at the time. Arizona is actually 3-2, Chicago 4-1, Green Bay is 4-0, New Orleans 3-2, and then 6 of the Lions' next 7 games are against teams with losing records.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about it, and we can talk about it more with the Lions, but like now, okay, it's
Is this why they didn't fire Patricia yet? Because they're going to expect
Yeah. So like like I said, like if they went out and lost to Jacksonville,
I think he'd been gone. There were lots of
he'd be
reports
gone.
saying that was his job.
Yeah, and they went out. I mean, we'll talk about it in a minute, but like they went out and performed well. So okay, you have to be like the way I look at the Lions is they're not good enough to be in that top tier of the NFL. Obviously, they're not in the top tier of the NFL. They're probably not even
Top half.
top half, but they should be the top of just. They should be just under there. You know what I mean? They should be. You know, they should be competitive with every team, almost every team, and they should squeak a win every once in a while. They
Against the
should
good
beat,
teams, not just the
yeah,
bad teams.
yeah, and they should beat all the bad teams. Like that's where they're at right now, and I'd be okay with that. The problem is the way they've been going out and losing. So yeah, I mean, now is the stretch of Patricia's career where it's like, hey, it's time to see, what you're building here. It should be to the point where you can beat all these teams with losing records. So.
Colts wide receiver T.Y. Hilton has now been held under 100 yards receiving in 15 consecutive games. So it's been since he had Andrew Luck at QB in 2018.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
I
he's
don't know.
really,
Like,
really struggling.
I think I saw somebody tweet. It might. So like, I went to school in Indiana, so like, I know a lot of Colts fans, and like, I think somebody tweeted they're like, is Ty bad at football? It turns out, like, is he actually not that good? Like, did we think he
I think
was?
it's a crowded wide receiver room. They've got people over.
Yeah, yeah. Even Pascal's been pretty good this
Yeah,
year.
Pascal's been really good.
So yeah, I don't know. Like, I still think he's talented, but maybe he's a little overrated. Maybe
I
Luck
think,
could
yeah,
be better than
overrated,
him.
I think is the right word. I think he's a good number 3. I would never put him even at
Yeah,
number 2 at this point. But see, with the Colts, they've got like 5 or 6 guys that are probably all number 3s.
yeah. They don't have anybody that stands out there, but
Yeah.
nobody's bad.
Yeah, I know
Like,
it's still deep. I would say that's deep if you
yeah,
have
and that's
5 guys.
and maybe that's what Philip Rivers needs and or is good with. They're fine with. They've been fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe Ty has just been inflated. Early in his career, he was inflated by Andrew Luck a little bit. So.
DeAndre Swift, when he went over 100 yards on the day, became the 3rd Lions player to produce a game with at least 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns within his first 5 career games. That was interesting. And he also hit 20.7 miles per hour on that 54-yard run, which tied with Minkah Fitzpatrick for the top speed for the week.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, he did look pretty fast on that, and then he decided to make it
moving. He was certainly moving. Yeah.
I remember watching that run. I'm like, why didn't you just keep trying to sprint straight? He tried to like juke that last guy
Yeah,
out.
I thought he should have just kept going. I don't know. I mean, we weren't on the field or didn't see it close, but that was probably the first time all year that we really got to see him break out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that. I mean, his game was he was. I wouldn't say he was a speed back per se, but like that was a big part of his game in college. He could certainly get to the edge and break away. So it was really good to see. Hopefully, he continues that because that would mean big things for the Lions. Not only this year. This year is this year, but moving forward.
Yeah. The 34 points the Lions scored against the Jaguars is actually the most in the Matt Patricia era. So the previous high was 32 against the Dolphins in 2018.
That's kind of sad. That's really sad.
I mean, 3 games of 31 points.
I mean,
they just have a better offense than that. That should not be the high.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard to score more than 34 points in the NFL, but you'd think, like, we would have put up a 40 every once in a while. Like, that's not good.
Yeah, you gotta pick 40. This image, did you see that circulating?
Yeah, I did.
John Runyon Jr. with Tom Brady. Tom Brady played with John Runyon's dad. What a disparity. I just felt like that was worth showing right there with my stats.
Well, I think if it shows the picture's cool, but I remember watching that. I watched that whole game, so they showed it at the end of the game, and Runyon came up to Brady, and I'm pretty sure they'd met before because Brady had been back to Michigan or whatever and talked or whatever, but he like introduced himself or reintroduced himself, and Brady initially, I mean, there's a lot made about him not shaking hands very often or whatever. Who cares? But initially he was like, oh, okay. And then he realized who it was. He's like, oh, I played with your dad. And then he started talking to him a little bit. And it's like, man, I'm old. So that was kind of cool.
He's got to know he's old at this point, but he's not done with that chip on his shoulder, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, he's, they pulled up his stats. A lot of people have been saying he hasn't been that great this year, but even before this past game, which I thought he played a pretty good game this past game, his stats are still right up with what he normally does. I mean, it's nothing, if not a little better. I mean,
yeah.
He's been.
I mean, we knew that he had a bunch of weapons this year, so people are still excited to see how good he could be at his age with all these weapons. Like
they haven't been healthy at all, really. And this past game was the first game that Gronk actually,
made it
up and was good. So if that happens, I mean, good grief. I mean, they might start get on a roll here. So.
The Steelers have had 3+ sacks and an interception in every single game this season. That's a good defense.
That's hard.
There's a reason I'm fiending for their defensive coordinator for a potential head coaching candidate.
Yes, which again, but the problem is the Lions need to lose a few games, and then you might get that.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to the Bears here a second. Matt Nagy is the second fastest Bears coach to get 25 career coaching wins in 39 games, and the only coach faster is the Papa Bear himself, George Halas.
Okay.
31 games.
Sure.
So, shout out to the Bears there. I always felt Matt Nagy was a really good coach as well.
Yeah, he's good mind, good offensive mind for sure.
He doesn't have all the talent. I mean, Ryan Pace tried to bring in a couple pieces, but blew all their draft picks. So that.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't really had a quarterback yet.
He did.
I don't know if he thought he did, but the Bears thought he did.
Yeah, Ryan Pace did.
Pace, certainly thought he did. Foles, I think he'll probably get everything he can out of Foles. So we'll see.
The Lions still haven't finished in the top half of the league in rushing since the days of Barry Sanders. Yeah, I'm serious. Today they woke up 15th in the NFL in rushing. Top half for the first time since Barry Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, the rushing game's been pretty good this year. I think I was watching the game. Since Barry Sanders retired, though, like cumulative up till that point, they are last in the NFL in rushing.
Oh, they've been really bad.
Like the last time I can remember them having like a relatively consistent running game was that one year Kevin Jones was decent.
Oh, he broke 1,000. That's rookie.
Yeah, it was like his rookie year. It was like, all right, pretty good. And then I remember Kevin Smith had like half a good season, and those are the only two.
Reggie Bush tried for a minute. He had a 100-yard game.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah. I mean, I know they had a lot of pretty good receivers, and Stafford for a while. They've had him for a while, but good grief, like that's terrible.
That's such a drought. That's
such a long time too.
Gosh, let's see what else I got. There are only 5 players all time in the NFL to have multiple career 90-yard touchdown runs. Derrick Henry is now one of them. Chris Johnson, Lamar Miller, Bo Jackson, and Amon Green.
Amon Green, okay. Yeah, Henry was he was a beast this past game. I mean, that was crazy.
And that was more than a 90-yard run. Was that like a 93-yard run?
Yeah, I think it was 93 or something.
He had a 96, I think, the year before that. I remember that too. So I wonder how many have done 93 or more.
People discount like how fast he is too because of how big he is. Like that dude is very fast.
Yeah,
too.
downhill very fast.
Like once he gets going, like you're not really gonna catch up to him, and you certainly don't want to get in his way.
Yeah, I mean his acceleration could use some work, but I mean he's a big guy, so there's his defense. I mean, he gets downhill, and he'll take off on you.
Yeah.
So despite the loss, the Cowboys are in first place in the NFC East with a 2-4 record. They are the first team with a losing record to have a division lead through Week 6 since the 1970 merger.
Dude, if the Lions were only in the NFC East.
I know. Petition to move them to the East, please.
Yeah.
I mean, the AFC East has been pretty bad this year, too.
Yes, it has.
All 4 teams in the NFC West have a record of 500 or better. Every other division in the NFL has at least one team with 1 or 0 wins.
Okay.
Interesting. Through 6 weeks, Frank Ragnow is the NFL's number 2 center per Pro Football Focus. There you
He's
go.
been good. I mean, I've actually been relatively impressed with the offensive line as a whole.
I saw another article. That's a good point that you make, because I saw an article about them that they're actually first in Pro Football Focus in run blocking this year.
Yeah, I mean they've been. I mean, clearly they've put an emphasis on the running game this year, because I think they just wanted to.
Well, Vitae, when they paid Vitae all that money, he's only notorious for run blocking.
Yeah, and I think they just wanted to take the hand, make sure it's just not all on Stafford all the time, and I think that's conducive to more winning, consistently winning football games. Now, obviously, it hasn't technically really worked out that way up to this point, but hopefully it's maybe it'll start to come together now. They can beat up on some bad teams, and we'll see where it goes. So,
a couple more for me here. Tua Tagovailoa was announced this morning that he will start after the bye week to face the Jets for the Dolphins. He will be the first left-handed quarterback to start an NFL game since Kellen Moore started in Week 17, 2015 for the Cowboys.
Really? You don't see a lot of lefties. No.
I mean, that means Tebow was gone by then. And, there's Michael Vick has been gone by then since starting.
The last couple I remember were Tebow, Vick, Mark Brunell.
Oh, yeah, he's been a minute.
Who played till he was like 40-something. He played a long time.
I think there's probably been a few backups here and there.
Yeah, there's been a few backups. I think Steve Young was left-handed.
Wasn't Taylor Heineke? I thought he is too.
Yeah, he might have been left-handed. I'd have to look it up. I know Steve Young was left-handed though.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's been a minute too. Yeah, Mark Bell was after him.
Yeah, he's probably all-time left-hander right there. But
here was a fun one. Andy Dalton, 34 completions. Kyler Murray, only 9 completions last night. It's the first time since 1948, at least 1948, we don't have stats before then, that a team won by 25-plus points despite its leading passer having 25-plus fewer completions than the other quarterback.
Wow. I mean, so Murray started, if I remember, like 3 of 13. And, he took a lot of deep shots, so he wasn't completing all those. And he finally completed on a few. And he was running the ball really well, too. So, I don't know. I think that just kind of sums up, like, the difference between those two teams, though. Like, right now, I mean, obviously, Dalton is not Dak, and he's not able to push the ball down the field nearly as much. And, so it's a lot more dink and dunk. And then Kyler's, they're looking for the big play all the time. So.
I got one more Lions one that will then transition us to official Lions. But we found out this week that the Jaguars were the only team that Matt Stafford hadn't thrown a touchdown pass against in his career. Turned out it was also the only team that had yet to one of 2 teams that had yet to intercept a Stafford pass. So Joe Scobert got his interception yesterday in a game on a deflection.
Yeah.
And then obviously they really pushed to get him that touchdown pass to Hawkinson because they went for it on 4th down the goal line.
They did
all 4 times.
Yep.
I thought that was interesting. And then
the that hasn't.
The only that hasn't intercepted him. Looks like it was the Steelers, which they have an interception in every single game so far.
Right. And not that he played the Steelers that often, so it makes sense. But still, interesting.
Yeah, so that kind of transitions us over to the Lions. What did you see that worked for them, obviously, in that game with the Jaguars? Obviously, being the Jaguars, not a talented team by any means, but they did something different, obviously. So what do you think that was?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that it was just a more consistent approach. They didn't get out of what was initially working. Obviously, like, they rolled a hot hand with Swift early. I think that's kind of been what they've tried to do all year. Peterson's been hot certain games, so they're going to ride him. Up to this point, pretty much Peterson's been the guy. But Swift Swift, I mean, the difference between Swift and Peterson, Swift gives them more than Peterson does from a potential standpoint. So obviously, if they want to work him into the game, they played relatively mistake-free, other than pretty much that tipped interception like you're talking about. They bottled up the Jags. The Jags can't run the ball at all, and the Lions proved that. And kind of the Jags haven't run the ball well at all year long, really. So, that should have been what the Lions did, and they took care of business there, which is good. And Minshew isn't going to go win the Jags games by himself. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I don't think he's not a game breaker, take over a game type guy. So they were pretty consistent throughout the game. I was worried when they went up early because I'm like, all right, we've been here before, So, but I just felt like that was the first game where just watching the game, you could tell that that the Lions were a better team, like just by far a better team. The Bears lost. I mean, at least at that point, I'm not, the Bears have obviously, I think they probably improved from week one as well. And their defense is just pretty much elite. But, at that point I was like, all right, these two teams are pretty similar. They were not, the up, but every other game after that, it's like, they're just not, the Lions just aren't as good talent-wise, or not quite at that level. But this was the first game where I'm like, all right, we can, from a talent standpoint, beat this team. Just go out and execute. And I think, that just kind of needs to be the focus these next, 5-6 games even. Look, you're probably as good or better than every one of these teams that you're about to play for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks. Just go out there and do it. Just go out there and execute, play mistake-free. And that was what they did. And it was pretty much what I thought was going to happen. They ran the ball. They were pretty balanced. Stafford got his play, took his shots when he needed to. Overall pretty solid win. I mean, there was nothing sitting there other than Swift. There was nothing that I'm like, wow, that was spectacular. But that's what you need to do against a bad team. Just take care of business and beat them thoroughly and move on. That's what they should have done. That's what they did.
So yeah, that's to your point. I think they got to keep running with a high hand, run with Swift. Obviously keep rotating in Peterson and carry on, see if they can kind of wear out the defense a little bit in between. But it stinks because 2 years ago they used a second round pick on carry on, and they traded up for him. This year, they drafted Swift in the second round, not even knowing they were going to get Adrian Peterson, and Adrian Peterson stole a ton of carries early in the season. But I think now they're going to start, obviously that's why I made the move that I made. I'm like, I'm banking on the upside now that Swift in the last 2 games has built on his resume a little bit more every single week, and he's getting more touches, getting more since they pretty much, I felt like, lost faith in him already after that first week drop to win the game. They almost no-showed him the last couple weeks. Like they were punishing him for this.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah. I mean, maybe that motivated him. You never know how certain players react to things like that. But I think they got to keep sticking with Swift. And like you said, keep beating these bad teams. You got to beat these bad teams. You got to carry that momentum to when you start playing the good teams again. And, keep putting the foot on the gas pedal. Like that was the other thing they did in this game. I felt like that not once did they ever I felt like they went conservative. They had one drive where they tried to run it a little bit, stuck the clock, but they had a 3-score game at that point. And I'm like, okay. But once they got back within a 2-score game again, they're like, all right, we'll start throwing it up. We got plenty of time where we can either lose this game or we can win this game by, making some of these passes. And I think that helped obviously later in the game where, they had the offsides. Jacksonville did shoot themselves in the foot a couple times, getting jumpy. And then obviously the offsides where Matt Stafford took the shot to Galladay coming down with it. I mean, Greg Jennings, when he was announcing that game, talked about it. He's like, that separates the great from the good receivers, and he feels like Galladay is a great receiver, being able to box out his defender, go up and get that ball. And then you refer back to DJ Chark in that game where when Duron Harmon picked off Minshew on that air ball, he's like, that was something that Chark kind of just watched it happen and boxed him out. And I think that's a big thing for receivers. If you feel like that ball is not catchable for you, at least try to play some defense in the air.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of things I really liked about that win. It's encouraging. And I'm one of those Lions fans. I know Lions fans were like, let's just lose, get Patricia out of there. In Patricia's defense, they've obviously had a tough schedule early on. I'm not a fan of Quinn Trisha very much at this point, but it is too early in the season for me to say, if they can beat up some of these bad teams for a couple weeks and then bring that momentum into playing some of these tougher teams and maybe win a couple of those tough games, they've proven something. But I think if they beat some of these bad teams and then lose against these good teams, I think Patricia is still gone by the end of the year. I think they've got to be playoffs or bust at this point.
I wouldn't even say playoffs or bust. It's just show something. Like, my problem is, they're not even like.
I feel like what's something though when a coach is taking you backwards in 3 years. Like,
yeah. I mean, but the problem is, when you lay such an egg for the first 5 weeks or so, I don't know if you can go playoffs or bust unless you just are automatically planning on getting rid of them. And maybe they are. That's fine. But it's like, okay, they need to beat up on these bad teams. So any loss or inexcusable type of loss up to this, after this is pretty much a death sentence for his job. And yeah, if they were to be able to squeak out, a couple wins against some good teams, like that does change the narrative, but I just don't see that happening at this point. So it's like we were talking about before, like the Lions are and really should be, unfortunately, where they're at right now is they're the top of the bad teams.
Yeah.
Right. And it sucks, to be there because the problem with being there is like you might as well just be bad so you get a better draft pick.
Yeah, they're the best house in the worst neighborhood. Like that's what
and it's like there's no benefit to being there. You're stuck in no man's land, right? So you might as well either be really bad or you got to get over that hump. And possibly the hardest thing to do in sports, not only just NFL football, but any football, any sport, is to go from being decent or being even just good to being like elite, right? To go to taking that step. And that's possibly the hardest thing to do. It's easier to go from being really, really bad to being decent than it is to being decent to being like really good or elite. And right now the Lions are at probably decent level, from an NFL standpoint, from a full scope of the NFL standpoint. And, and they've been there for a while. Even under Caldwell, they maybe were obviously they were a step above where they are now, but they were never elite, and they've just kind of been stuck between this, pretty good team, borderline playoff team, wild card type team, to, where they are with Patricia, which is like 6-10, 7-9, 8-8, maybe 9-7 type team, right in there, just missing the playoffs team, and they've been stuck in that spot forever. Mm-hmm. And it's like other than the 0-16 type stuff, and they've been stuck there, right? And to get over that hump is really hard to do in the NFL because you're not getting top 5 draft picks. You're not getting all kinds of draft picks either. You're in the middle, and you're not going to. The good teams are going to stay good because they've built something, and the bad teams are going to continue to improve because they're getting better players because they're getting top 5 draft picks. So that's where the Lions are at, unfortunately.
Where do you think they'll be at the end of this Falcons game? Like, what do they have to do to beat the Atlanta Falcons?
I mean, I think they just have to continue to do kind of what they did last game. I mean, I think the Falcons are probably better than the Jags, even though the record doesn't say that. They're definitely more talented than the Jaguars. I think the Lions secondary is going to be tested this week. The Jags have some receivers that are tough. Ridley is good. Julio Jones had a breakout this past week. He's been pretty bad up to this point, but I know he's been hurt. You know, but I think this is a winnable game. Before the season, I wasn't quite sure. This game was kind of more of towards the toss-up range, but this is a game that, if the Lions want to be, at least have a chance to consider this season a successful season, in the end, this is a game they have to have. You can't go out there and lose to the 0-5 Falcons. You can't go out there and do that. A team that's already fired their head coach. You can't go out there and do that. Regardless of whether, the Falcons have some talent, obviously, Matt Ryan, there's questions about him, but they still got good receivers. Their defense has some players on it. You've got to go out there and show out this week. And to do that, I think it's just same idea, play balanced, don't turn the ball over. Obviously they had the one turnover this past game, but on a tip ball, things like that happen. Don't turn the ball over, and just limit the big plays. I think that's the biggest thing with Patricia's defense and the defense that he was running with New England, maybe Belichick's defense too, but it's don't just limit the big plays, keep the ball in front of you, and force turnovers. If you can force some turnovers
and make your tackles. Yeah, they did not miss any tackles. If you were back to that Jaguars game, they have to make their tackles. They can't let Ridley get on the edge. They can't let Julio Jones take a stiff arm to a face of a D-back. I mean, and Todd Gurley, they can't let him run over them either. Like, they've got to make their tackles when they get those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to Patricia's defense, and any defense. Obviously, every defense has to tackle, but it's like, look, he's not a over-aggressive defensive coordinator by any means. In fact, he's passive if you really think about it. Compare him to, let's say, like a Todd Bowles for Tampa Bay, who's blitzing it seems like every freaking play. Completely opposite ways of getting stuff done, right? But it's a safer defense. Really, it is. The Lions defense is a safer defense if you
have the personnel.
Yeah, if you have the personnel and if you just execute, and it requires precise execution. You can't have busts. You can't miss tackles. You can't, have coverage busts. Stuff
mental
like that.
errors. No mental errors. That is huge.
And you just keep the ball in front of you. Force teams to kick field goals all game. If you force teams to kick
don't break.
Goals,
that was always Patricia in New England's mentality, was bend don't break. He always said.
And then you'll force a couple turnovers because guess what? It's really hard, even for professional football players. It's really hard for them to play mistake-free on offense all game long. If you are executing and making your tackles and forcing them to drive, 10, 15 play drives all game long, they're going to mess up eventually, and then you got to capitalize. And that's what they always did in New England. It just hasn't happened to this point in Detroit. Saw some glimpses last week. Like you said, they tackled. They were consistent. They didn't.
The defensive line was stuff in the run against James Robinson. That's been very successful this year. That's got to be something they've got to continue with Brian Hill, Todd Gurley, Ito Smith, Kadri Allison. There's a couple guys there that all capable of carrying the ball. And again, they're going to have to – that offensive line is pretty much stacked. Off the top of my head, I think left guard and right tackle is probably their worst spot. But I think Alex Mack is one of the best at center. You got Jake Matthews at tackle. I want to say their second-year guard, Chris Lindstrom. Those guys are good. They're a little weak at right tackle and left guard with James Carpenter and Caleb McGarry. But that's they've got to be effective. They've got to still blitz. Jamie Collins had a nice game last week too. He was taking out some linemen and running backs to kind of open up the blitz. So that's got to continue. They've got to keep stuff in the run and make their tackles in open field. And they did a great job of that last week. That has to continue.
I think that's the biggest thing, because what happens is, the Lions' offense isn't so much big play right now, and I'm okay with that. Obviously they had some bigger plays this past week. Swift had a big run. They've had some bigger plays, but it's like, they're more of a consistent force, and that's fine. Especially when they're running the ball like they have been for the most part. Like, that's good. It keeps your defense off the field. It takes pressure off them a little bit.
And it wears off their defense.
Exactly.
All the tackles pursuing the ball. it's easier. It's harder to pursue the ball on a run every single play than it is to cover for one quick play.
Exactly. So they're being able to do that a little bit, and that's fine. But your defense needs to execute to a point where they're forcing field goals. They're not giving up big plays. So defense is giving up big plays. You can't have a slower paced or less of big play offense because they're just never going to be able to keep up. And in the Patricia era to this point, they busted on defense a lot. They've looked good for a lot of times, a lot of games that they've looked really good for 2, maybe even 3 quarters, and then they bust open. So it's about just finishing, and it's about being consistent for 4 quarters. And last week was promising. I mean, it showed some good signs. Now they got to do it against probably a more talented team, albeit a worse record. But now they got to do it against a more talented team, and then build from there. So,
all right, quick prediction. What do you think happens in this game?
I think the Lions win. I think it's going to be something like maybe I think it'll be close. I think it'll be like a 28-24, 27-24 game. I don't think it'll be super high scoring. If it's super high scoring, I think that favors the Falcons more, though.
Yeah. They have too many explosive weapons at wide receiver and stuff that offense can go.
Yep.
The Lions are going to have to control the ball with their run game again. The defense is going to have to make their tackles and stop the run. And I think that will lead to I think that defense could hold them under 20, maybe at 20. I'd probably say 27-20 Lions probably.
Yeah.
But,
I don't think the Lions are going to run away with it. I didn't really think – I was actually surprised they won by the margin they did last week. The Lions did, but I don't think they'll necessarily run away with it just because I don't think the Lions have an explosive type of offense. Hopefully, that Swift is going to add some of that to the offense a little bit in the next couple of weeks, but I think it's going to be more of just a consistent. I think that's what Patricia wants. I mean, really, what he wants is, there really weren't that many times in New England when they had some crazy explosive offense. They were consistently good. And they had some years where they were stupidly explosive, but not when Patricia was there. They were just consistent. They didn't turn the ball over. They didn't make mistakes. And they went out and they did their job, and that's what the defense did too. And then they typically won games by 10 to 14 points consistently. That's what they did. And I think that's what he wants.
That was a weary out scheme that they kind of ran.
Yeah, on both sides of the ball. And that's, and when you're playing against a team that is just consistently out executing you and is clearly that much better coached because they're out executing you, that sucks if you're the other team, because you're like, holy crap, we might even be more talented than them, but they're just executing better. They don't make mistakes. They don't mess up,
no dumb penalties.
Yeah, they don't mess up. They don't do anything to hurt themselves. So you have to go out there and beat them, and it's hard to do that. So.
Well, this is the focal point of the show here. October 24th, we're going to kick off some Big Ten football, and kind of wanted to go over what you expect from the Big Ten this year. 8 games. Who's running away with it?
So, I mean, unfortunately, Ohio State is just that much more talented than every other team.
The team down south, yeah.
Yeah. Could some teams give them, I don't know. So this COVID stuff obviously throws a wrench into everything for, regardless of sport. So, the only detriment Ohio State has on their team, if you go through their roster, they don't have any quarterback depth, right? So if Justin Fields gets hurt or gets COVID or something crazy happens where he can't play, yeah, they might be in some trouble. But other than that, they're going to be all right. They're going to be fine. And even if he does, I'm sure they'll find somebody that can
probably just hand off. I mean, they've got like 3 running backs.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. So, I just don't see a team who's going to go out there and beat them. Obviously I'd love to be like, yeah, Michigan's going to beat them. But, on paper, it doesn't make sense. They're just not – they just on paper aren't as good. And they haven't proven – that they can rise up to the, in that game yet. So, yeah, I'd say Ohio State's probably going to run the table. There's some other good teams in the Big Ten, though. I think Wisconsin's going to be pretty good. Minnesota should be pretty tough. We'll see. I don't know. Minnesota. Ask me about Minnesota after week 1.
I know that is a huge tell.
Because here's the thing, like they beat a good Auburn team last year in their bowl game. I don't know how much stock to really put into that. Whether Auburn was motivated. I don't know who even played for Auburn in that game. I didn't really watch much of the game. Who knows? And they beat Penn State at home last year. Other than that, they played absolutely nobody, right? So they've got some guys coming back. They've got reigning Big Ten receiver of the year is coming back. Tanner Morgan's a good quarterback. So that that they should still be a pretty solid team. Penn State should be on paper they're probably second or third most talented team in the Big Ten. Definitely skilled. They're breaking in a new offensive coordinator who came from Minnesota, by the way, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out for both teams. Journey Brown's probably going to be out for a while, at least for the beginning of the season for Penn State, possibly the whole season, so that kind of changes some things for them. Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. 8-game schedule. Well, they get a 9th game, but 8-game regular season. Every team gets to play a 9th game though. I don't know. I think the top 4 or 5 teams are probably pretty much set in stone. I don't really see a team that from down below, like a Nebraska or a.
I have 4 teams that probably go 4-4 in my pick. I mean,
but I just don't see those teams being that good though. You know what I mean? Like I don't see them like, wow, they put a scare into Ohio State this week. No, I don't really see that happening. It's not, and I wouldn't want to call it a top-heavy conference.
David Blau beat Ohio State.
He did. I just don't see that type of thing happening. Right? Yeah, I guess you're right, but I just don't see that type of thing happening.
Especially in a shortened season, like one loss changes the standings a little bit for sure.
It does. I don't know.
I agree. Like I think it's pretty set. I think it's like Ohio State, and then you got like Penn State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan.
Yeah.
And I think after that, you're sitting with Iowa, Nebraska, Indiana, and Northwestern. Maybe Purdue falls probably in there, but I think Purdue is really with their uncertainty at quarterback. Rondale Moore and David Bell, they're wide receiver studs. Someone has to throw them the ball. That's where that comes into play. So I have Purdue probably at the bottom of that tier. And then, Michigan State and Maryland maybe probably fall in that.
I would actually put Michigan State in a tier of their own, but they're still below those other teams. So, right. But they're above Maryland and Rutgers. So, Illinois, Michigan State, probably pretty even. You're right.
Well, Illinois's got Brandon Peters this year, so that's gonna be interesting.
And they ended the year on a bit of a tear.
I like Lovie Smith is a good coach in my opinion. Yeah. It's a good place for him to be is coaching college football. But yeah, Rutgers once again they got a Nebraska transfer Noah Vidal at quarterback now, and he's gonna be battling it with Arthur Sikowski.
Yeah.
They have the best puncher.
If he doesn't win that battle, then it's going to be a long year for Rutgers.
Yeah, I really like. I think Vidal is going to be pretty good there. But there's not a whole lot of weapons for Vidal to go to or have. It's not really a place where a quarterback's going to see success potential.
They're going to be bad.
Yeah.
They're going to be bad.
The good news is they have the best punter probably in the nation with Adam Korsak, and he's probably going to be on the field a lot. So.
Yeah.
But Greg Schiano now over there.
Yeah, I think it's just going to take Schiano another. I mean, he's back with Rutgers. That's where he was before. I think it's probably going to take him 3 or 4 years to really even get it close to what he had before. So at least if he can ever do that again, because it's a different climate in college football right now than it was then. Different conference. He was in the Big East before. He's in the Big Ten East now. He's got to play Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State every year. I mean, that's kind of pretty much 4 L's
Yeah.
automatically
No,
for that dude pretty much right away.
I have them 0-8 for sure. I
Yeah.
just it's a tough division. I don't know why they ever agreed to this with Maryland to join
No.
the Big Ten. They get beat up like a tied up goat every single year. But
Yes, both of them do.
um, yeah, moving on to Illinois, it's pretty much Brandon Peters to Josh Imatorbe at wide receiver.
Yeah,
They've got
he's
a,
good.
a good tight end with Luke Ford. Their defense, I think, is probably better because they have Milo Eifler and Jake Hansen at linebacker, and they have two good corners with Nate Hobbs and Marquez Beeson.
Hmm.
After that, I mean, there's not a whole lot anywhere else. They have half of their line is coming back, so they've got returning starters. That's something that Michigan will not be able to say. We'll talk about them soon.
Hmm.
But yeah, Lovie Smith is obviously the bright side, and we'll see if he can bring out the best in Brandon Peters' final year before draft eligibility here.
Yeah, I think Illinois was doing some good stuff at the end of last year. You know, Peters was kind of in and out of the lineup because he was unhealthy again last year a little bit. So but he gives them a chance. I mean, he's a competent quarterback, which they have not had.
Yeah,
I don't think he's a game breaker, but he certainly gives them a chance.
Benson's Juice Williams.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like 2007. I mean, that's a long time.
They had like Mikel LaShore and Juice Williams.
Yeah, yeah, they had some. I mean, they had some good players back then. But it's like,
Aurelius Ben. Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
No, I mean it's been a minute. Yeah.
So he gives them some competence at quarterback. The guy that's not, should give him a chance every game. And they're not gonna probably compete with the top tier, but they should certainly be able to duke it out with the middle tier, and lower tier of the division.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, I think they're probably at the top of this bottom tier for sure. I have them, but to me, in a shortened season, I think 2-6 is their best. I think I have them at 1-7, but I think they might squeak out 2, and it'd be a great season for them if they pull out 3-5.
Well, the question is, and we can get to them shortly, but the question is, what is Michigan State with Mel Tucker in his first year when he really hasn't had any time to he barely even has met his team.
Yeah.
With all, the stoppages. They even had to stop longer than most teams because they had a COVID stoppage for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks at the university, so they couldn't even be out there with, when other teams were out there before all this, before it was going to restart and everything like that. So,
and that could hurt them with their quarterbacks. I mean, yeah, we'll go right to Michigan State then. You kind of transitioned right there, but I have them kind of towards that bottom section here. But yeah, Mel Tucker's first year, I think they're going to be pushing 2-6, and I think most Michigan State fans I've talked to actually would be okay with 2-6, 3-5 this year.
Yeah. Anybody with a brain, the idiots are not, they.
Yeah, there's always gonna be those biased homers that are just we're going
62. Yeah, no.
Or just constantly bring up their 4 seed in the championship.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Where they just got killed. But I think it's important for Mel Tucker to have this kind of rapport with his team, and like you said, they haven't really had that with the quarterback situation they have, where there's 3 quarterbacks dueling it for that top spot, and they've got the veteran Rocky Lombardi, who's not been jack for them.
No, he's been
have Theo Day has been there, and he's gotten a couple of snaps in there, but otherwise they have their true freshman. They're not their true. He's a redshirt freshman, Peyton Thorne.
So I keep up with like a lot of stuff with the Big Ten, just insiders and stuff like that. So it sounds like Peyton Thorne might be the guy for them.
I looked on our lads for depth charts, and it looks like he's currently listed as number 1 as well. Lombardi and Day is 3.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, a lot of people still think maybe Lombardi might get the nod just from an experience standpoint, at least in week 1.
It would make sense for week 1 only because of COVID, because just the time and preparation that they have.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like they wouldn't be surprised if they split time early. I mean, if you're Michigan State, this is the first year of a new head coach, and you have no expectation. Yeah. Who cares? I mean, other than you care to an extent, but like all you want to see if you're Michigan State is some kind of improvement game after game, whether you're taking a loss or a win. I mean, it is what it is. You just want to see some improvement, because then you can be like, okay, look, we're getting better, and then you can show recruits, hey, if you were here, we would have won this game or we could have won this game, that sort of thing. Because like really, what they need to do is they need to revamp everything because it was such behind the times and so far down, by the end of the D'Antonio era and so many issues. That it's pretty much a complete rebuild, in my opinion. It might not take as long as some other rebuilds because I think there is some sort of foundation there.
They still get like solid 3-star, sometimes.
Yeah, and they have some success to lean back on in relatively recent success. So I don't think it'll take necessarily as long as some other rebuilds. But this year, I wouldn't put any kind of if I'm a Michigan State fan, I wouldn't put any kind of expectation.
I throw your freshman out there right now if I'm making the decisions. But yeah, I'm not. But if you got a rookie and a coach, put your rookie or freshman quarterback in there too, and see what you can do for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
build experience for him, and maybe by the time he's a junior, they have this kind of figured out with Mel Tucker, and then they're competitive already.
Yeah,
that's your best case scenario, in my opinion. So. I mean, and then they also have some pretty key opt-outs on the offensive line, so that might hurt for the development of a new quarterback. Because Jordan Reed, their offensive tackle Jordan Reed, and then their guard Justin Stevens opted out, so that leaves pretty much Luke Campbell and Kevin Jarvis at guard, and then their center, I think Matthew Allen, Brian Allen's younger brother. So. They're okay, except for those 2 spots. But I think the people that are most excited following Michigan State is probably the wide receiver, Jalen Naylor.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've got a transfer, Jaden Reed.
He was really good at Western.
Yeah.
Really, really good at Western.
Yeah, and then they've got 2 tight ends. If they want to run 2 tight end sets, they've got Tommy Guajardo and Matt Dotson. Matt Dotson's a proven tight end there.
Yep.
And
he's coming off an Achilles injury, so who knows? If you tear your Achilles tendon, I don't know if you're coming back from that one.
The only other guys that I can list here that I would say might help them keep them afloat would be Naquan Jones as a pretty good defensive tackle, Xavier Henderson at safety, Antoine Simmons at linebacker, and Jacob Panasuk is their edge rusher. Other than that, then they're going to have to run a little bit. They might have to run Eli or Elijah Collins at running back a little bit extra this year to kind of give maybe Thorne.
I'll be interested to see what they do with Julian Barnett.
Yeah.
Moved him to receiver last year. And it sounds like they moved him to corner this year. I think what that says more than anything else is that they feel all right at receiver with Naylor coming back. Because Naylor was hurt a lot last year. They can get Reed because he had to sit out a year after transferring. So they probably feel okay at receiver, but they probably feel really bad at corner if they're moving Barnett there, because Barnett was probably their most explosive receiver last year, with Naylor being out, and he probably could have been their most explosive athlete in general. I mean, he could play a lot of different positions, but if they're moving him to corner, they probably don't feel very good there. Not saying he can't play corner, I'm sure he can, but to remove him from another impact spot, that probably says more about their depth at corner than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, if you take away Xavier Henderson from safety, that is might be the worst secondary and top Power 5 conference football. So that's kind of where I stand on that. So I have them going 2-6. Quickly, we can go to Maryland. Currently, they've got a quarterback battle because Josh Jackson opted out. They might have Tua's younger brother, Talio, take a Vailoa, go up against Lance Legender.
Legendre. It's Legendre.
Yeah.
He's French.
Oh, it is Legendre. Yeah, I have that. I have it written down to pronounce it right.
He's French.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jeshuan Jones at wide receiver with Dante Demas. And then their defensive line, they've got Ami Fanau at D-tackle and Joseph Bellatepoli at edge, and then Nick Cross at safety. And Mike Loxley, again, kind of an experienced head coach there. I don't have a whole lot of hopes for them. I think they probably finished bottom 3 of the Big Ten here.
My problem with them is they just don't – I mean, their offensive line is terrible. It's a sieve. They put up some crazy numbers as far as points the first 2 or 3 weeks last year, and then just got pummeled by anybody with a pulse last year. So, the quarterback battle, I mean, if Tua's younger brother, but he's not Tua.
Yeah, and no one expects him to be Tua.
Yeah, and no one expects him to be – obviously he transferred from Alabama, so that's great. That's cool. I'm sure he has talent, and maybe he'll show some of that. LeJean played a little bit last year, but he's more of a runner. He can't really throw the ball from what I could tell, even if he has improved. Good runner, but really didn't show much throwing the ball.
So who do you think gets it, Tolly or LeJean?
I think Tagovailoa probably wins it.
Well, again, Loxley is a young coach. It could be the same situation with Michigan State as they take the new quarterback.
I think that he'll probably just play Tagovailoa and roll with him. And I wouldn't be surprised if LeJean plays because he is a really good runner. Yeah. I mean, he played a lot. He probably played 15 snaps or so in that Michigan game last year, and he had some success running the football. But I mean, he couldn't really throw the ball at all.
No arm.
No arm. I mean, nothing going on there. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays, but and especially because I mean, Maryland's been a turnstile at quarterbacks the last few years just because guys have gotten hurt because they have no offensive line. They run their quarterback a lot. They get beat up. So I think both guys will probably play.
I think it would be different if they had Josh Jackson back this year, but he obviously opted out.
I mean, he had experience.
Yeah. I don't know. So, I felt like a 3-5 season was in grasp. I see again 2-6 as a ceiling for them. 1-7 most likely. Yeah, they're just
it's too tough. You don't have those non-conference games to against bad teams to count as wins. And I don't think necessarily Locks is a bad coach, at least offensively. I think he's got good schemes. Obviously, he was at Alabama. He's been on some good. He's coached some very good offenses in the past, but I'm not quite sure as a head coach, what they're doing, what the whole grand scheme of things is looking like there. They're in a tough situation in the Big Ten East. It's a lot to overcome. They're actually recruiting pretty well. They're getting some good players. They have one freshman receiver is going to be really good. Jarrett, I think is his last name. He was
better than Deontay Carew.
Yeah, He was a 5-star though.
Wow.
So he should probably be their, be one of their better receivers this year. But so they're showing some recruiting prowess, but I just don't think they've got a lot to overcome in that.
That comes with the territory. I think you move in the Big Ten, you establish yourself in the Big Ten as long now. I mean, Maryland's been in it for a couple of years now, where it's like, okay, you're going to probably start getting those occasional big guys that want to play better level competition to prove themselves.
Yeah, and they're in a good recruiting. I mean, the DMV is a fertile recruiting ground.
New Jersey and Maryland, yeah.
Some great players in that area, but Maryland is not where they end up going most of the time. So, or Rutgers. Speaking of Rutgers.
Yeah, I know. Rutgers is literally like center from New Jersey.
Yeah, and they don't get any of those guys. So it's unfortunate for both those teams. They just are kind of out of place in the Big Ten, and I think they'll probably remain there.
Yeah, up in the next tier here, we'll go to, let's say, Purdue. Outside of Rondale Moore, like I said, and David Bell at wide receiver, they've got Jack Plummer or Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. What is Jeff Brom going to be able to do with this squad?
Well, Jeff Brom has COVID, so nothing this week. But other than that, Plummer played a little bit, I think, last year. And, I mean, I don't know. Like, Brom runs a very quarterback-friendly offense, so they'll probably put up some numbers. Obviously, Rondale Moore doesn't need a whole lot of space to get going, and he can certainly,
I think he's the best receiver in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I would agree. So he's a huge weapon. They'll definitely he'll get his numbers. I just don't see, on a defensive side, they're not really proven. George Karlaftis is really good on defense.
Yeah. And Derek Barnes linebacker, Jalen Alexander linebacker. So they've got two and Lorenzo Neal at defensive tackle. He's a potential NFL prospect too.
Yep, and I think Karlaftis is probably gonna have a good year as well, and they're gonna be good. Probably front seven is probably in the not upper tier, but they're gonna stand up pretty good. But I just don't see there's not enough depth. They just don't, on offense up front they're pretty bad. Who's gonna run the ball? I just don't see them taking that next step. I know they want to be, the next step for them would be getting to the point where like Indiana's at right now, to where they're, maybe they can compete for 8 or 9 wins pretty consistently. maybe they can, push the good teams, but maybe probably not beat them, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously Purdue is, squeaked out, they upset
They
Ohio
always
State.
win. They always win one game. They
One
should.
big game type thing, but it's like that's not good enough for like as a program, if you really want to, build a program. And I think Brom, certainly has some good aspects to what he does. I mean, he's a smart offensive mind, and does some good things, but it's kind of getting to the point now where, that first year, he kind of took some teams by surprise, but now I think some teams have kind of figured out his shtick a little bit. And we'll see. I mean, I don't know. This year, for all coaches, this year I think is just kind of a not a gimme year necessarily, but like I don't think you can necessarily make certain decisions, hiring or firing, necessarily off of this year, depending on the situation. But I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of that. But if I'm Brom, I mean, you got to kind of start showing that consistent, uptick in development in the program, and I just don't see it really happening this year. So.
Kirk Ferentz's team in Iowa with probably the longest leash. He's been there for a long time.
Now he's a racist apparently, and now he's still there.
Oh, I did not know about this. No kidding.
Yeah. Look that one up afterwards. Yeah, look that one up.
I know he's got some work with a new quarterback, Spencer Petras.
Yeah, no idea about that dude at all. Because I'm pretty sure Nate Stanley took like every snap last year. But he'll be a
project, but
probably be a typical Iowa quarterback. Probably won't turn the ball over that much. Probably throw for like 15 touchdowns.
And they got two running backs they can get the ball to. I mean, they got Tyler Griffin and Mekhi Sargent.
Yep. And what is it? Smith Marset at receiver.
Oh, wide receiver. Yeah, with who's the other wide? Tyrone Tracy and Brandon Smith at wide receiver. They've got Sean Bayer at tight end.
Smith Marset, though, I tell you, that guy is good. Like he's one of the top tier receivers in the Big Ten.
I have him as the number two. I have him as the number 2 NFL prospect right now out of Iowa, because outside of their offensive tackle, Lyric Jackson.
Yeah, Lyric Jackson's good too. So I think Iowa's going to be Iowa. I mean, they're typically going to be.
I just think that it's a 6.
They're going to grind you out. I mean, you extend 4-4, but if you extend 4-4 to a 12 or 13 game season, they're going to go 8-5.
Yeah,
like like normal. Like
that's what buys Kirk Ferentz more time every single year. He might have a 5-7 year, but he'll come back with an 11-1.
Exactly. If the schedule works out for them any given year, they could win 10 games, 11 games. So, I think they'll certainly be a test for every team. I think physically, I mean, they're certainly going to go out there. They're going to grind you. And I don't think Ferentz is a bad coach. He's been there long enough, and he's come up with some pretty good game plans. Against they blew out Ohio State a few years ago. That was nuts. So I mean, they certainly know what they're doing. They're well coached. They don't make mistakes. But they're at such a talent deficit sometimes that they aren't going to overcome the good teams.
No one wants to go to Iowa. Like, that's the hard part. It's just Iowa and Nebraska have to deal with the same uphill battle.
It's now, Iowa, man.
Now that Nebraska's not in the Big – they were the hot spot to go in there in the Big 12. But, like, if you want to play in the Big 10, no one's, like, excited to go to Iowa or Nebraska. So, we're going to Nebraska here. My second favorite Big 10 team and probably college football team. But, again, they have Adrian Martinez at quarterback. I think out of all Big 10 quarterbacks, he's probably a top 5 Big 10 quarterback. Probably 5.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with Martinez is he had such a bad year last year. He had a great freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was in and out of the lineup because he was hurt so much. I wouldn't be surprised if Luke McCaffrey plays a lot, though.
I would not complain about that. I like Luke McCaffrey.
I think he's pretty good. Because basically, I mean, I don't know. Scott Frost said this in the press conference this week. He said it's going to be Martinez. Martinez was named captain. He's going to be the starter. But pretty much he said, I don't think there's any separation between Martinez and McCaffrey. Really, if Martinez didn't have experience, McCaffrey would have been the starting quarterback.
Makes sense.
So what's that tell you? I mean, McCaffrey's pretty darn good. I mean, skilled. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they're going to have a super long leash with Martinez this year. I just don't.
Well, and again, not a whole lot of targets in my opinion. I have Wan'Dale Robinson at wide receiver, and then at tight end they have Jack Stoll. But other than that, it's going to be Dedrick Mills at running back, and then running on their experienced offensive line with Brendan James and Ben Still and Bo Wilson.
Yeah.
They've got a couple guys. DiCaprio Bootle is probably one of the better defensive backs in the game. I have him probably as the number 1 draft prospect for Nebraska. And then you'll get JoJo Doman at linebacker and Cam Taylor-Britt at defensive back as well. So we'll see what happens with Nebraska. But again, they're kind of in the same situation where they might even be a peg below Iowa.
I would say they're probably a peg below Iowa. I mean, I know we talked about them afterwards, but I'd say they're a peg below just because from a program standpoint, I mean, it's almost to the point now where, I mean, Scott Frost has talked a big game since he came in. You know, he kind of had to because no one cared about Nebraska when he got there. I mean, who cares? It's Nebraska, right? So he kind of had to drum up interest in his program in general. But it's like, all right, man, like you've gotten to the point now where it's like, okay, everybody's going to give you a pass for that first year. You know, second year, you know, you had some issues with injuries. No one expected you to be good anyway, but, you know, you were hoping to see probably more. It's like it's time to show some improvement now, dude.
In a shortened season, yeah.
In a shortened season. So this year is going to kind of come with some of that caveat, you know, like, hey, you know, this was a weird season. We'll see whatever. And they've got a tough schedule. The Big Ten did them no favors. They start with Ohio State.
That is a brutal schedule.
That might be ugly that first week. Probably will be.
Yeah, because you know Brian Day was out there getting extra practices. Jim Harbaugh to call him out.
Yeah, apparently, and I don't think they even needed it. So,
more in that middle tier here. We'll go through Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald's like into his 15th or 17th year or something now.
Yeah, he's been there.
I think it's going to be another mediocre year for them, kind of in that same spot. Peyton Ramsey, probably another top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten, if I just think about it. But other than that, no other guys really jump out to me other than Patty Fisher at linebacker.
He's good.
And then they have, to me, one of the best tackles in the Big Ten, Rashawn Slater. You get Isaiah Bowser at running back and Drake Anderson at running back, Riley Lease, wide receiver, Trey Pugh at tight end. They got to add Blake Gallagher at linebacker and Cam Ruiz at corner. To me, again, those are mediocre guys, and those guys jump out at superstars other than maybe Slater at tackle. But, I mean, you're only going to have an effect on one corner of the line. So,
right. I think Ramsey to me is like the perfect Northwestern quarterback, though. He's like, he can run around a little bit, like decently athletic.
Mike Kafka, if you go back to Mike Kafka.
Decently athletic, really accurate, not a really big arm, so he's not going to really stretch the field by any means, but he's pretty perfect for what Northwestern does. Their quarterback play can't be much worse than it was last year. I think Hunter Johnson averaged exactly 4 yards an attempt, which is one of the worst I've ever seen last year. And that guy was a 5-star recruit that once was at Clemson, which is amazing. But anyway, they fired their offensive coordinator, so they'll have a new offensive coordinator this year. So I mean, you'd hope they'd be better there. I think they probably will be, because for a while there, they had some decent offenses. They weren't necessarily explosive, but they were pretty consistent. They were tough to prepare for. They had some good quarterbacks. Kafka, Dan Persa was good.
What was that? Clayton
Thorson was good. Trevor Simeon was not bad. So you know they put a guy in the. I mean, and then they had what was the other guy? I don't know. He was right along with like Persa. He was their other backup, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, they've had some good quarterback play up until kind of the last couple years, and it's kind of fallen off. So, you know, if they get back to some good quarterback play, I think they can probably be better. I just don't think it's going to be an amazing year. I think it's going to be another mediocre year. On defense, they don't impress me.
I think they get the quarterback back because obviously Peyton Ramsey is a guy you and I both seem to like. He fits well with what Northwestern likes to do. It's just not a whole lot of weapons around him to really do much more than what Peyton can offer. So, yeah,
I mean, you know, Ramsey isn't going to be a guy that's going to take over a team and, you know, he's not a game-breaking talent. He's just better than what they've had in the last few years. And, you know, on defense, Patty Fisher's pretty good, but other than that, no one really stands out. I think Pat Fitzgerald typically is going to field a solid defense, well coached. They're not going to
they're usually disciplined.
They're not going to beat themselves. They play very hard, but, you know, eventually the talent is going to catch up to you.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, mediocre probably at best.
Well, yeah. So the last mediocre team that we can cover is Indiana.
Yep.
Tom Allen carrying that team. I think it's literally mediocre. I have them going 4-4. You have Michael Penix Jr. Quarterback, and then Stevie Scott running back, Whop Phil at wide receiver with Peyton Hendershot at tight end. Defense, Marcelino Ball at safety with Tywan Mullen and Micah McFadden. So there's a few names on that defense, but it seems like there's at least about 8 other holes on that
Yeah,
defense as well.
I think they have a chance to be pretty darn good offensively. Penix has
I
been
like Penix, yeah.
Yeah, Penix has been in and out of the lineup, but when he's been in, he's been explosive. I mean, big arm, left-handed. By the way, get back to left-handed quarterbacks. Left-handed.
He's starting in the NFL soon.
Yeah, he can run a little bit. They've got some weapons. Whop is good. Hendershot's tough. They've typically always had some pretty good receivers the last couple of years at least. Stevie Scott's a good running back. So I think they've got a good chance to be pretty explosive offensively. Penix gives them something that Peyton Ramsey never really could, which is being able to stretch the field a little bit with a big arm. So if he's had issues staying healthy though. So if he can't stay healthy, I mean, you don't have Peyton Ramsey to fall back on now. So if he's able to stay healthy, I think they've got a good chance to be explosive offensively. But I don't know if they're going to stop anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, defensively they don't have.
Yeah, like I said, they've got about 8 holes other than
Yeah, I mean they don't. I mean up front they're pretty deficient. At linebacker they're pretty bad. I think they just had an injury too, if I remember hearing, to one of their guys. They aren't very good. And Tom Allen's. It's pretty much Tom Allen's defense. I think they hired a new defensive coordinator this year, but Tom Allen's a defensive coordinator in all actuality. So I think it's pretty much his defense, and he'll have him playing hard. He'll probably have him playing pretty sound, but they just aren't talented enough on that side of the ball. So yeah, I think they're probably, just for the sake of how they've been the past few years and for the chance that, just because their offense has a chance to be pretty explosive, one of the probably, upper tier as far as ability on offense, but I think that probably pushes them above most of the mediocre teams.
Mm-hmm.
But they're probably going to be so bad defensively it won't matter. So
we're moving up the tier here to the top 5 now, but this spot is kind of going to determine, obviously, in the first game, Michigan and Minnesota, who's the number 4 and who's the number 5 team, pretty much the Big Ten altogether. Minnesota, who are some guys, obviously we can talk about it a little bit with Michigan, this Michigan game this first week. Who are some guys that Michigan's got to be weary of?
I mean, if you're Michigan this week, you just can't. I mean, in my opinion, I just wouldn't let Rashad Bateman beat you.
Oh yeah,
so he's clearly the guy.
I think he's the number 2 route wide receiver in the Big Ten, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he might even be the best. I mean, he's up there. He's clearly the guy. I mean, if you're gonna portray NFL guy though, I mean, Rondale Moore is more of a slot guy.
Yeah.
Just a little undersized. I mean, obviously, the NFL is coming around to some of those guys more, but from pure, typical NFL receiver standpoint, Rashad Bateman is the best receiver in the Big Ten. I think,
Vincent Green's gonna have his work cut out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Minnesota is an interesting offense. They don't pass protect well at all, but they throw the ball so quickly that it really doesn't matter. At least that's pretty much what they did last year. They are going to be breaking in a new offensive coordinator because Kurt Shiraka went to Penn State. So that'll be interesting to see because he's been with PJ Fleck for a while up until now. So that'll be really interesting. I think, I feel pretty good about Michigan's chances in this game on offense because I feel like they're going to be able to run the ball on Minnesota's defensive line. They're not – Minnesota's defensive line doesn't strike me as all that imposing. Neither do their front 7 as a whole doesn't strike me as imposing. And they lost Antoine Winfield Jr., who was probably best DB in the Big Ten last year. So I feel like on offense, Michigan's probably going to be okay as long as they don't turn the ball over. But defensively, it's going to be tough. The weather might play a factor. It's supposed to snow in Minnesota starting like tomorrow, so that could play a factor.
I heard it's supposed to be up 30. Yeah.
Yeah, if it becomes a snowball type game, that's advantage Michigan in my opinion. But if it's not, I don't know. I feel pretty good about Michigan's chances offensively. On defense, it's just slow down Bateman to a point where he doesn't beat you by himself, and then I feel like they'll be pretty good. I feel like they should be able to stop the run. If we get into a point where they have to be a drop back passing team, because Minnesota runs a lot of RPOs, they run a lot of quick passes, a lot of stuff that eliminates the pass rush. But if they can force Minnesota to be a drop back passing team, where they've got to take 4 or 5 step drops, Michigan's got good defensive ends. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson and Kwity Paye are probably going to get after that quarterback pretty good, and Don Brown's probably going to put some pressure on him. So I feel pretty
jumping in there. Josh Ross.
Yeah, I feel pretty good if they can.
Like you said, if it is a snowball, if it's one of those kind of games, Michigan's got like 3 or 4 running backs. They just keep circulating, give them the ball too if they need to. My concern is with Michigan is they're 4 out of 5 offensive linemen besides Jalen Mayfield. They just have really no experience.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. I mean, Ryan Hayes started 2 or 3 games last year at left tackle. Andrew Stuber probably beat Jalen Mayfield for his job last year before he got hurt, and then Jalen Mayfield got the job by default, and then obviously was very good. So, if Stuber's going to move to guard, the Stardust has been, the question marks are at left guard and center. The biggest question marks are. So, left guard is Chuck Filiaga probably.
Yep, that's who I have there. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been there a while at least. And was a
probably Zach Carpenter at center though is what I've been looking at.
Yeah, they're probably going to start Andrew Vastardis. It sounds like though.
With the experience, yeah.
Yeah, he's the walk on. Yeah. So, but he played a little bit last year when Ruiz went out for a little bit. He played a little bit last year, so it sounds like he's probably going to be the starting center. I think it would have been a better sign if Zach Carpenter was a starting center because that would have meant he's probably pretty special.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a bad thing if you've got a smart, experienced guy at center. So I'm not too concerned about the O-line. I mean, I do get your point though. I think their biggest issue isn't necessarily going to be running. It's going to be the pass protection up front. Because that requires a lot more communication. You requires
if you want Joe Milton to use that arm of his, you're going to have to get.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep him clean. I don't really want to see him getting hit all game long.
We don't know what we have with Cade McNamara yet.
Yeah, we don't need to see that. So
no, I mean, so the reason I say that it's advantage them, despite offensive line, is if they circle between Zach Charbonnet, Hassan Haskins, Chris Evans, Christian Turner, and then they have Blake Corum. Like if they've got several guys they can just keep putting in there. I like Corum a lot too. He'll probably even be second. He might be second fiddle. Yeah. But Minnesota's only got Mohamed Ibrahim at running back, and he's a good running back, but there's not a whole lot of guys to take the ball from him to have any level of success. Minnesota's got 3 wide receivers. If you take away Rashad Bateman, then they have Chris Ottman-Bell and who else do they? I know they can throw it to their tight end Brevin Spanford, but yeah, they've got some guys that they can throw the ball to. But if it comes down to having to run because of weather conditions, then Michigan's advantage for sure with those 5 guys they can give the ball to.
Yeah, I just see this game as like, okay, for Minnesota, like we talked about, like who did they play last year? Like who did obviously they beat an Auburn team, considered a good SEC team. Auburn beat Alabama, so you got to put some stock in that. That was in a bowl game, who knows? And then they beat Penn State at home. Tough game, close game, bit of a shootout. Awesome. They didn't beat anybody else. They didn't play anybody else. They didn't beat anybody else. They almost lost their first game to South Dakota State. They very easily should have lost that game. First game, caveats, whatever. But I just don't think. I don't think they're bad. I think they're probably very solid. But I just want to see them. If I'm a Minnesota fan, or if I'm looking at Minnesota as objectively, like I'd want to see them come out there and you're not going to have any kind of home field advantage other than you're playing at your home field. You're not going to have a crowd. It's not going to be, the stadium's not going to be rocking like normal. I just don't, against a good defense, which I would hope Michigan has, at least a good defense. And I would think Michigan would have at least a good defense. I would like to see, what happens if you're Minnesota. Because as a Michigan fan, I feel pretty good about this on paper, and I feel pretty good about, things that Michigan can do against what Minnesota might not be as good against.
So, yeah, I have more faith in Michigan's front seven. Obviously, with Ambry Thomas not playing this year,
Yeah.
That pretty much leaves Vincent Gray out there by himself. I like Dax Hill and Brad Hawkins at safety. But, front seven, even if you ignore Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson, then you have Donovan Jeter, Luigi Villon. They have Carlo Kemp. Just other guys. Those are plenty of guys to fill spaces there on the defensive line. And to me, Christopher Hinton, don't want to forget him. But, yeah, they've got guys to fill that front seven. It's just that Dax Hill and Brad Hawkins and Vincent Gray are about all they have in the secondary. And that, to me, that can also be a cause for concern.
Yeah, someone's got to step up. The biggest question mark on the team for me would be that second corner spot. So if they had Ambry Thomas and Vincent Gray was your second corner,
yeah, cool.
I feel all right about that. Vincent Gray doesn't have to guard Rashad Bateman all game long. That's fine. So I'd feel good about that. I don't think it's a knock on Vincent Gray necessarily. I just don't know if he's ready to be number one corner, right? Mm-hmm. Someone's got to step up, it doesn't necessarily have to be week one necessarily. Maybe they throw a couple different guys out there to see who kind of sticks.
They've got the Green brothers, German.
Yeah, the Green brothers. It sounds like one of them might be the guy. They moved Sammy Faustin to corner. Sounds like
DJ Turner's in the corner.
He's a highly rated recruit.
Andre Seldon, I think, was a transfer.
They've got a chance.
Michael Barrett's probably their Viper.
Yes. Yeah. So I feel pretty good with their front seven. Like you said, that second corner spot is the problem.
Yeah.
And it's a little scary because
so it's going to be a new offense in general, obviously with a new quarterback. There's wide receiver. They've got so many athletic players, but they now don't have Nico Collins, who is like the bodied possession receiver, doesn't have the speed like all these like Giles Jackson, Mike Sainristil, Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson, AJ Henning. Like we've got guys at wide receiver that are going to make a difference. Obviously, guys with speed and explosiveness, but is that going to be such a new thing for Michigan? Michigan's never really been speed wide receiver.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little different. I'll be interested to see how they, what they do, because I think the idea behind it all is like, okay, you're going to have 2 or 3 backs that you can just consistently every game rotate out. And it might be 2 or 3 different guys every single game, depending on who's hot, who's not. I would expect Charbonnet to probably be the best back, Haskins behind him. And then Chris Evans, I think they're going to use in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And then, maybe Blake Corum gets in there for some certain things, or, we'll see what happens. But then I think the same idea goes with the receivers. I think they're just going to churn these guys out and put them in different positions to get the ball in advantageous spots and use their speed. I mean, if I'm looking at the team, Ronnie Bell's a consistent guy that pretty much consistently gets open, but he's probably going to have to move more to the outside this year.
Has one drop a game. He's good for one drop a game.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he eliminates that. But, he's probably going to have to move to the outside this year. Cornelius Johnson is probably going to be another outside guy. Roman Wilson is probably the fastest receiver on the team.
I've heard about Roman Wilson.
That guy, yeah, he might be the fastest receiver on the team.
AJ Henning, though, he's a transfer as well, right?
Well, AJ Henning's a freshman. He's a freshman.
Oh, okay.
But they've got some speed now. Wilson, Henning, Giles Jackson can run. Sainristil can run. Like you said, those guys can certainly. I think the idea is to just kind of turn those guys in and out, and maybe run with a little bit more tempo. Maybe get those guys in space a little bit more this year, because like last year they had a lot of talent at receiver. Nico Collins, was probably, if he had played this year, was probably top 3 receiver in the Big Ten, I'd say. I mean, he'd probably be Bateman and Moore, and then Nico Collins, 3 or 4 right there, right?
I like Chris Olave, former Michigan.
Yeah, I still like Nico Collins with an actual quarterback. I just feel like that's the best way that they're going to be able to kind of ease Joe Milton into this offense a little bit. And maybe not put too much pressure on him and just be like, hey man, just just get the ball to your guys in space and let them run. See what happens. Let them run and go from there. That would be what I would do. I don't know what they're going to do, but if I'm looking at the roster and how it's designed, they've got a lot of weapons, a lot of speed. I would just, let them get out there and let them run. So.
Yeah, so we don't leave any pages left unturned here in the Big Ten. Wisconsin and Penn State and Ohio State we still have left. Wisconsin with Paul Chryst at coach. Jack Cohn at quarterback. Garrett Groshek at running back. Someone's got to fill in the big.
Cohn's hurt though, so.
Oh yeah, I did see that too.
Cohn, I don't know what he did, tore his ACL or something bad. So I think it's probably going to be Graham Mertz.
Oh, I did. But he's exciting.
So this might be a blessing in disguise for Wisconsin.
Yeah, right.
So Jack Cohn, nothing against Jack Cohn, but
he's like all the other ones, man.
He's like every Wisconsin quarterback to ever play, right?
Yeah.
Other than Russell Wilson. He's literally the most normal Wisconsin QB ever. All right, he's gonna throw for 16 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and he's gonna be okay. He's gonna turn around and hand the ball off. Graham Mertz, he was pretty highly touted coming out of high school. I mean, he's talented. He's got a big arm. He's got a little bit more to him than Jack Cohn. So, it might not look that way right away, but if I'm Wisconsin, I'd be excited.
They're also, instead of always having that mainstay, I mean, maybe until you go back to James White and Monty Ball and Melvin Gordon days, but at running back, they're going to go back to running back by committee, I think. I mean, Garrett Groshek might lead that group of three guys, but I
hope they don't start him. I don't think he's very good, but he might. Yeah, I mean, he's the most tenured guy for sure, though.
They're going to do running back by committee, so he might get maybe the majority, but it's probably a 40, 40, 30, and 30. I don't know. So, other than that, they've got Jack Sanborn at linebacker, who I like, Eric Burrell at safety, Isaiah Loudermilk, defensive tackle. But then at wide receiver, it's Kendrick Pryor and Danny Davis. Tight end will be Jake Ferguson. And then they've got a really good tackle in Cole McLannon.
Yeah. I think up front they're going to be good, normal.
Typical Wisconsin,
they're going to find a tailback. I mean, like I said, they'll probably, at least early on, they're definitely probably going to split carries. Groshek will get a lot of them. He'll probably be their third down back at the very least.
Yeah.
But they'll find a guy eventually that they'll probably be able to rely on pretty good. That is a little bit of a question mark, though, at least with a shortened season, though, is hey, you don't have that much time to kind of figure out a guy. You don't have 4 games early, that are easy to kind of figure out what you are. So, I think they're definitely in that. They probably deserve to be above that Michigan-Minnesota tier right now.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they finish in that tier or below those two teams either.
It could be the development. Yeah, with Cohn being hurt, the development of Graham Hurts. I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah.
With Penn State, perhaps the best defensive player in NCAA football, with Micah Parsons opting out. That's for sure the biggest opt-out in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Someone's got to step up at linebacker, even though they've got great edge work with Shaka Toney and Jason Owe.
Yeah.
But at corner, they're good with Tariq Castro-Fields, and then Lamont Wade at safety. Tight end, probably the best tight end in college football with Pat Freiermuth. And then, again, they're pretty good on the offensive line with Will Freese, Michael Manet. And then Sean Clifford will be taking snaps behind center. And, James Franklin, just a really well-respected, solid coach in the NCAA.
Yeah, I think, they're –
you talked about Journey Brown not being around, though. That does change things.
Journey Brown being hurt, which is a recent development. He's at least going to be hurt for he'll probably be out for most of the year, if not the whole year, is what it sounds like. It's undisclosed, but word on the street, it's a heart condition possibly, so that might not be good. That changes it. I don't think it's it's a big blow because he might have been the best returning back in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have a lot of good backs. Noah Cain's good.
Oh yeah, Noah Cain for sure.
So they've got some good backs there. I don't know. It'll be interesting. They're going to be breaking in a different offensive coordinator. So maybe that has some different transition costs early. I don't know. I think they're going to be good. Losing losing Micah Parsons is huge for that defense. I still think they're going to be solid, though. We'll talk about Ohio State in a minute, but they're still just a tier below Ohio State for sure. And it's a clear tier. Like, it's not like they're pushing them. Like, they're not.
Ohio State runs away with it. It's just kind of,
and it's this year makes it, at least on paper, this year is the most evident I've ever remembered it. So, like, last year, some people felt Michigan, at least on paper, should have been better. Penn State, should have been better. There was at least 3 teams that you're like, they might win the Big Ten, right?
yeah.
2 years ago, Michigan and Ohio State were pretty much all right there, right at the end, and then Ohio State blew them out, right? So, like, but this year it's like clearly from the beginning, like, Ohio State is that much better than every other team, and it's like this Penn State team is like solid. Like, this Penn State team reminds me of pretty much every Penn State team they've had the past 4 years, but they're still just like such a tier below, like a clear step below Ohio State, that it's probably frustrating for them. Probably frustrating for the coaches, because it's like we kind of talked about before with the Lions and some other NFL teams. Like, to go from being really good to being elite is the hardest thing to do, especially when you have an elite team already that you have to play every year. And to be elite, you have to beat them. Really, I mean, that's really what it is. That's where Michigan is right now. They're not bad enough to where people are going to get fired and fans are storming the athletic department's building with pitchforks and burning stuff. Like, they're not going crazy, right? They're not that bad, but they're there's nothing to write home about at this point. So it's one of those things where it's like you have to get through that hump, and it's one of the hardest things to do in college football and in sports, pro sports, any sport. So that's where Penn State is. That's where Michigan is. It's kind of where Wisconsin is, other than they play in the West, so they're usually just in the Big Ten championship kind of by default.
Easy as cakewalk over there.
Yeah, pretty much cakewalk, and other than Minnesota's been good last year. But that's kind of where Penn State and Michigan have been in the East last 4 years probably. So
that leads us obviously to the final here, Ohio State. Justin Fields at quarterback. Running back, they've got like Master Teague. They've got Trey Sermon, the transfer from Oklahoma, and then they've got Demario McCall. So they've got 3 running backs right there that can take the ball. They've got Luke Farrell at tight end they've got 2 tight ends, don't they? I'm trying to think of the other one was.
Rucker.
Oh, Rucker, yeah. And then, and then Chris Olave at wide receiver. And then, obviously they're stacked with Wyatt Davis, probably the best guard or interior lineman.
Yeah, he opted back in. That was big.
Yeah, that was big. Then they get Pete Warner and Tuff Borland and Baron Browning all at linebacker, and Thayer Munford at tackle, Jonathan Cooper at edge, with Tyreek Smith also at edge. Like they're looking good pretty much all the way around. Sean Wade at corner, probably one of the best corners.
Zach Harrison's going to be big for them on defensive end this year. He was a former 5-star. He'll play a lot. They're going to be tough.
I'm just reading this depth chart upside down, man. These guys are good. And Ryan Day has been no scrub since they were worried about that transfer from Urban Meyer. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Obviously, like you said at the very beginning, if Justin Fields, gets hurt with mobility. Mobile quarterbacks can get hurt in the Big Ten. They're going to be looking to hit him. Then you got Gunnar Hoke, maybe the next tenured guy at quarterback. Otherwise, they maybe go the young guys with like Jack Miller or Jagger LaRoe. And then they don't have
That's their only spot where I sit there and I go, I mean, if somebody got hurt,
that's a
I'm
big.
not sure.
He's a Heisman hopeful right there.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, other than Trevor Lawrence is pretty much the only other guy that I look at and be like, that guy's that. I wouldn't even say Trevor Lawrence is clearly better, but I just think Trevor Lawrence is better. But like, it's pretty darn close between those 2 guys, like just pure ability standpoint.
And then also a quick shout out from the Buskers. Wallabies lost to the All Blacks in rugby. There's your shout out.
All right.
Plug that in there. Australian rugby, yeah. We'll go right to, we were going to talk about Michigan game by game, but maybe we'll just kind of do the same thing we do with the Lions with the time.
Yeah, we can do that, or we'll see how this first game goes, and maybe we can just
We'll
preview
probably
it.
know a lot after this first game. So yeah, we'll go
I
to
think
pick
this
six.
game, like you said, this game is the biggest. Obviously, it's the biggest game in the Big Ten. College game is going to be there, but it's the biggest game in the Big Ten this week, and it's the only game that I think we're going to learn a lot
Yeah.
about teams. So
This is gonna be super important.
Yeah.
We'll go to the pick six here in a minute. Game one's already started now for the World Series, so we're gonna go game two for the first pick six tomorrow, 8:08 first pitch, Rays versus Dodgers.
obviously, I would obviously have an informed decision if if I know the result of the first game, but I'll just go Dodgers. I think they're riding hot now. They've kind of figured it out. They had a little bit of a scare there in the NLCS. They were able to battle through it, battle back a bit. They've just got depth all over. I think the Rays are good, but the Rays are kind of they're not trying to piece it together, but they're constructed way differently than the Dodgers. Constructed almost 100% analytically, which is fine. You do what you got to do. They've made it to the World Series, so obviously it's worked for them. But I think the Dodgers just are better. Obviously, if I knew what was going to happen tonight, then it would change things.
Yeah, that does help making an informed decision for sure.
Yeah.
So,
but at the same time,
too much crap about it getting us wrong if we are, but
yes, but I'm going Dodgers for sure.
yeah, I'm also going with Dodgers. I just think they are riding the momentum. The Rays actually hit a couple hiccups there, almost completely choking away their shot against the Astros in the championship series. And then the Dodgers had to battle back against the Braves when they were down 3-1. So that says a lot about momentum. Momentum's like a train, man. It's hard to stop. So assuming the Dodgers probably even win tonight, and then they might win tomorrow, take a 2-0 lead already in the World Series. This could be a quick World Series, honestly. We could sit and talk about that more, but maybe we'll do more next week if it's still going on. I don't know if it was. Yeah, it'll be probably game six. Game six would probably be next week, Tuesday. But so both Dodgers on that one. How about Steelers at Titans?
I'm gonna go Steelers. I've just been very impressed with the Steelers this year. This one's tough. They lose Devin Bush. I think they'll find somebody to be able to play there. I think it's gonna be a grinded out game. I don't think Derrick Henry is gonna run completely roughshod all over him like he was able to last week. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be surprised if he still has 100 yards, but it's gonna be a tough earned 100 yards. It's gonna be much tougher for him this next week. And the Steelers are going to do everything they can to make Ryan Tannehill beat them. And I don't think Ryan Tannehill is going to beat them. So I'm going to go Steelers.
I am also going to go with the Steelers too. Derrick Henry, I think his best chance is maybe getting a goal line run touchdown if you're going to help fantasy owners a little bit. I've got him in both leagues, so I pretty much have to play him by default no matter what. And I am a little nervous about it. Just the Steelers haven't given up a 100-yard rusher in a while.
Yeah.
Regardless of who they played. And that defense was looking really good. So I think Steelers walk away being one of the only undefeated teams left in the league. So, both Steelers on this one as well. Let's go 49ers at Patriots.
This one's tougher. I think the Pats bounce back. I was actually pretty impressed with the Patriots this past week. Obviously, they lost. I wasn't impressed with the level of play, but I was impressed. Yeah, they looked ugly, but they did everything they could to make that game ugly to give themselves a chance. So it reminded me. It was classic Belichick. Well coached, put themselves in position to win, and they could have won. And they without practicing pretty much at all this past week, they easily could have won. I think they bounce back as long as they don't have any more COVID mishaps. This upcoming week, I think they'll bounce back, and I think they'll get that win. Yeah,
I wanted to say the 49ers. There's talks that Raheem Mostert may not be healthy.
Yeah,
and they're still dealing with the injury bug for sure. So I don't know what to expect out of this game, but I feel like the Patriots and the Belichick coach team is always a mainstay, and if when in doubt, choose Belichick's Patriots. So I'm going to go with the Patriots as well here.
Yep.
Bucks at Raiders.
I'm gonna go Bucks. Bucks are getting on a roll a little bit. I think. I think they'll ride that momentum from a big win last week. Brady's starting to play well. Gronk actually showing out this past week. They're starting to get a little healthier. Um, you know, Ronald Jones has been awesome this whole year, pretty much. The defense was menacing last week. I think part of it was Green Bay was probably a little overrated to an extent, but
They've had a cakewalk schedule.
yeah, they have. But still to do that to Aaron Rodgers, I know everybody's giving Aaron Rodgers crap right now, saying he's washed up, but he's still a good quarterback, and to do what they did to him, that's pretty good. So I'm gonna go Bucks. Might be a little bit of a shootout. Bucks have a tendency sometimes to give up some big plays. If they eliminate that, I think they win easily. But they start giving up some big plays to a pretty good offense on the Raiders, it might be a bit of a shootout.
Part of me also agrees with you that the Bucks probably win this game, and I think I'm purposely going to pick the Raiders just to try to put a little bit of difference in here. I think the Raiders play everybody tough though, and again, if Carr keeps Carr's been very smart with the ball this year. His decision making has been solid. They've drawn up some plays that have kind of worked his advantage. Josh Jacobs is continuing from his rookie season, having another really good year, and they're getting the ball to guys that Darren Waller's been effective. There's other guys that have stepped up when they need them, and that defense has been impressively tough. I really expected, and I expected maybe 500 at best for the Raiders at this point, and they've overachieved. Yep. So I'm going to say the Raiders make another statement and beat the Bucks.
All right.
And then the last one here is this. What is this? 3, 4, 5. So yeah, this is Bears at Rams.
Bears, Rams. I'm gonna go Bears. Before the year would have gone Bears, no matter, probably, no doubt. And the Bears have been way better than I thought they would, so that would lead me to think, oh, this is a no doubt Bears pick too. But the Rams have been way better as well. But I just think the Bears defense will probably overwhelm, and they'll find a way to kind of do what they've kind of done all year long, score a couple touchdowns late, maybe a couple fourth quarter touchdowns, and pull one out, win by 10 points, something like that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not going to be too different for you and me this week. We'll have to get Isaiah's picks pretty soon, but I'm going to go with the Bears as well. The defense keeps stopping everybody. It's been actually quite impressive. They've showed up against even some pretty tough teams along the way, and they may not always – it's never a pretty game, it seems like, but it seems like they always squeak it out. And the Rams, you and I kind of were low on them in the beginning of the year. They're already impressed. They've already impressed us more than that.
Isaiah, I will give a shout out to Isaiah. He thought they were going to be better than we thought they were going to be.
By like 4 games, we're looking at 2-14. It's like 6-10, 7-9.
Really?
I think it's gonna. I still think it's gonna run out.
Yeah, I do too.
On paper, they're not good, and they've had kind of an easy schedule. It hasn't been too tough. When they first beat the Cowboys, we're like, wow, you beat the Cowboys? And they were like, well, why the Cowboys?
Right.
So I think it's going to hit them a little bit. Obviously, they're going to be better than their 2-14, but I still don't think they're going to touch Isaiah's 6-10, 7-9. I think the Bears beat them up a little bit here too, and maybe even hold them like 10, 13 points.
Yeah, this Bears team kind of reminds me of that team they had 2 years ago, mid-playoffs, where they just win a bunch of close games and rely on that defense, and the offense is just good enough in every game. Mm-hmm. Last year, the defense took a little bit of a step back. They had some injuries, stuff going on, and the offense was not good at all. Had no redeeming qualities, pretty much. This year, they've got a couple things going for them offensively. Allen Robinson's been really good. They've ran the ball a little bit better. That's pretty much all you got to do when you got a really good elite defense like that. So, I think I wouldn't be surprised. You're right, if they beat up on them a little bit, maybe win something like 30-10 or something like that. So.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna just say I think Habib Nurmagomedov is gonna beat Justin Gaethje this week, but that's not on the pick six. I
No,
hope Gaethje wins. So that I will watch that
that'd be neat
fight.
to see. That'd be a story.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Gaethje, but Habib is a really good fighter. So we'll see what happens. I only watched a couple of fights start to finish throughout the whole year, and this is definitely going to be one of them. But wanted to
Sure.
put that one in there real quick. This officially has been the longest show on the 6-3 podcast.
History.
So, yeah. When it
Well,
was,
hey, we talked a lot about the Lions. Lots to talk about, and then we.
yeah, well, then the Big Ten, I think that was a great Big Ten preview. I think, gosh,
Yeah.
you really know your stuff, and that was super helpful. And I did a lot of research, and here you are just battling this stuff up. But
Yeah, we've been slow at work.
no, yeah, I mean, me too. So
Yeah.
I'll never tell my boss that. That means more work. So, but yeah, it was good stuff today, Ben. We'll catch you next week. Hopefully, Isaiah will be back.
All right.
All right,
See ya.
see ya.